Meghan Markle has officially left the royal family, and the real reason behind her departure has left many stunned. The decision came after Prince William uncovered a startling truth, evidence suggesting that Meghan had been documenting private royal moments long before she and Harry stepped down. What followed revealed a calculated plan that could no longer be ignored. It started when a staff member from the royal communications team discovered private footage in a recent documentary. One short clip, filmed from inside a vehicle, showed William stepping out of a Range Rover, yet no press had been present, suggesting the footage came from someone inside the palace. Additional clips surfaced, including one from a private family dinner and another from a school event with Princess Charlotte. These were events where cameras weren't allowed. Someone had clearly been recording confidential moments. William's team began a quiet internal investigation. They reviewed footage, staff logs, and records, uncovering more evidence. Private conversations, family-only events, and even sensitive discussions at Sandringham had somehow made their way into documentary voiceovers. These weren't accidental leaks, they had been carefully curated. As William reviewed the material, what disturbed him most was a drone shot of his children in the palace garden, footage taken without consent. It became clear to him that this wasn't just about unauthorized filming. It was personal. Someone was using his private life for content. His aides connected the dots. Meghan had frequently held reflection sessions after royal events, during which she casually recorded conversations with staff. One such conversation about clothing choices appeared almost word for word in the Netflix series. While the royal family had tried to support Meghan, it now appeared she had been building her own narrative from the start. Her Netflix deal gave her the rights to use personal moments from her time as a working royal, including photos, audio, and video. There were no restrictions. The final proof came from a Netflix executive who, at a private dinner, admitted that Meghan had been collecting material long before production began. A British media advisor secretly recorded this conversation. Soon after, an anonymous envelope arrived at Clarence House containing a licensing agreement from before Meghan and Harry stepped down. It permitted a third-party editor to use private royal content, confirming premeditation. Prince William, once hopeful it was a misunderstanding, now saw it as a deliberate betrayal. Legal teams sprang into action. Media outlets were warned against airing leaked content. Netflix was notified that the Crown would pursue legal action if it continued to release private footage. Before taking final action, William met with a former Archewell editor who confirmed Meghan had recorded extensive private moments, even timestamping emotionally significant events, like William walking alone after a family meeting, to build a narrative. Meghan's goal, the editor said, was not just to tell her side of the story, but to expose what she saw as flaws in the monarchy. William was done. Meghan would no longer receive royal invitations or appear at official events. A final confrontation was set. Meghan, unaware of what was coming, was invited to discuss a mental health initiative. Instead, she was met by King Charles, Prince William, and senior officials. There were no pleasantries, just a clear message: they knew everything. The recordings, the contracts, and the breach of trust had all come to light. The royal family would no longer stay silent. Charles said they had reviewed everything: video footage, contracts, emails, and agreements. Meghan tilted her head, her expression composed, as if trying to remain in control. William said she hadn't just told her story, she had exposed private moments that belonged to others. She had crossed a line. Meghan replied that all she had done was tell the truth and share her own experience. William remained calm, but he made it clear she hadn't simply shared, she had exploited the family. She had recorded them without consent. She had turned private access into something marketable. He pointed out she had filmed restricted areas, recorded conversations not meant for the public, and used footage never intended for release, all while insisting she wanted privacy. The words hung in the air. Meghan defended herself. She said she had every right to control her narrative. She insisted what people saw was authentic, not manufactured. Charles responded, saying the family also had the right to protect its image. This wasn't just about speaking out, it was about taking advantage of her role. William pulled out a folder and slid a paper toward her. It was the licensing agreement they had recently discovered. He said it showed she had signed it before officially stepping back from royal duties. Her content wasn't reflection, it was premeditated. Meghan didn't touch the document. Her face stayed calm, but her hands gripped the chair. This was no longer a conversation, it was an accusation. She turned to Charles and mentioned the press, the headlines, how isolated she had felt in the palace. Charles responded that this was no longer about media. It was about trust. She had used their world for her own gain. She explained she was trying to prepare for what might happen once they stepped away from royal life. William said it wasn't preparation, it was betrayal. She had recorded moments that weren't hers to share. His voice wavered, not with anger, but fatigue and hurt. Meghan said she had to protect herself. William disagreed. He said she was making money from their pain. The room fell silent. No shouting, no chaos, just firm words and clear lines. Charles spoke sparingly, but his tone was resolute. Meghan had broken trust. As a result, she would receive no more support from the monarchy. Her title would be reviewed. She would no longer represent royal charities. She was handed a letter from the king's office, warning her not to use royal materials in future projects or face legal action. She asked if this meant she was being cut off. William confirmed she would no longer be included in royal events or communication. The palace wouldn't speak for her, and she could no longer present herself as a working royal. Meghan stood still, processing the words. This wasn't just a loss of title, it was permanent separation. She asked if Harry knew. Charles said yes, and that he had chosen not to attend. For the first time, Meghan's composure wavered. She stood and said they were making a mistake, that the public believed her, and this would only validate her claims. William also stood. He told her she had treated their lives like a story, planned and filmed it, expecting it to end her way. She looked to Charles, who remained silent. As she left, Meghan warned that the world now saw the truth. William replied, "The truth is all that matters." That was the end. No return. A staff member handed her a sealed envelope with the formal letter. She took it and walked away. No one followed. The sound of her heels echoed until the heavy door closed. Inside, silence returned. William sat down again, his face unreadable, no relief, just finality. Charles spoke quietly. "It's done," he said. William agreed. Whether it would last, they couldn't say, but something fundamental had changed. Publicly, Meghan kept her composure. She smiled, gave interviews, launched new projects. But privately, she was working on something larger. The Netflix deal was just one piece of a much broader plan. Meghan was crafting her own brand, one that would reshape the public's view of the monarchy. While other royals relied on traditional palace teams, Meghan hired her own, Hollywood PR experts, media strategists, and even a filmmaker. They weren't part of official palace life but operated behind the scenes. They joined calls, reviewed edits, and crafted press releases. Palace staff grew suspicious. Unusual emails came from private accounts. Photographers appeared in unexpected places. Staff were asked to sign NDAs not issued by the palace. Behind closed doors, Meghan was laying the groundwork for Archewell, her foundation, media company, and future platform. It started with quiet meetings and calls to industry contacts. A well-connected lawyer helped her reconnect with a Netflix executive. That contact led to one of the biggest royal-related media deals. Meghan's team carefully shaped her U.S. image, portraying her as modern, brave, and silenced by tradition. Stories emerged painting her as misunderstood and courageous. This wasn't just for sympathy, it built momentum. When Netflix showed interest, Meghan negotiated hard. She wanted creative control and the final say on content. She wasn't a subject, she was the storyteller. At the palace, few knew how far things had gone. Meghan continued her duties, kept up appearances, but worked on the project late into the night. 2 months before stepping down, she made a secret trip to New York. Skipping royal security, she used a hotel side entrance to meet with a media agency. That meeting stayed hidden until later legal documents exposed it. There, she presented a preview, footage of her walking Windsor grounds, narrating her experience as a duchess, and emotional scenes staged to appear candid. It looked personal and raw, but it was scripted and edited. Her promise to show the real royal life was what sealed the Netflix deal. Before the release, she worked with PR firms to manage the backlash. She expected criticism and had responses ready. A PR consultant said the goal was to stay firm. She didn't need approval, only attention. Harry participated in the series, giving interviews, but he hadn't been part of the early planning. At one point, he asked for a scene about William to be removed. He found it too personal. But Meghan had already approved it, it stayed. As Archewell grew, so did Meghan's connections. She attended high-profile events, made alliances with politicians, celebrities, and activists, not just for publicity, but to remain relevant. She also stayed informed. A quiet ally within the palace gave her updates, what was being said, any legal threats, and the royal family's stance. When tensions peaked, her legal team was ready. They argued for creative rights and personal freedom. Meghan felt secure. But she didn't count on William. He wouldn't stay silent. As Meghan built her global brand, William chose silence. He didn't want more negotiations or public rebuttals. He wanted distance. Just before the final confrontation, Meghan tried one last time to connect. Through mutual contacts, she offered to delay a second project if the palace would issue a neutral statement about the first. William never replied. Instead, he waited at Clarence House, hoping there might be one final conversation. But the meeting ended not with peace, but with closure. Meghan had mastered the media. She knew how to shape public opinion. But she misunderstood what the royal family valued most, loyalty. The crown had faced betrayal before. William, shaped by duty and personal loss, wouldn't let their lives become a spectacle. As Meghan kept pulling strings behind the scenes, the palace remained silent. But in their world, silence is rarely indecision. It's a verdict. She had led the monarchy through war, grief, political upheaval, and scandal. For decades, she was the embodiment of British identity. But in her final years, away from the cameras, traditions, and public spectacles, she watched her family unravel. Many assumed she was unaware of the growing fractures, but those close to her knew otherwise. Her instincts remained razor-sharp, and her memory was impeccable. She understood people, power, and the high cost of both. Few knew that in the weeks before her passing, the Queen wrote a private letter addressed solely to Charles and William. Its contents were tightly guarded, hidden until a moment came that she had quietly anticipated. That moment arrived when Meghan entered Clarence House, confronted by an accusation the Queen had foreseen in her final months. By the summer of 2022, the Queen had retreated from many public duties. She made fewer appearances, allowing Charles and William to assume more responsibilities. Yet her mind remained focused on one issue, the widening gap between the royal family and the Sussexes. Though she rarely spoke about it openly, she raised quiet questions with trusted advisors. Why was Meghan so eager to publicize her experiences within the palace? Why did intimate moments continue surfacing in global media? Why did royal life seem to be unraveling into entertainment fodder? Her concern wasn't bitterness or confusion about a younger generation. It was a deeper fear, one rooted in the preservation of the crown. She believed the monarchy's image was being commodified and sold, and it didn't feel accidental. One particular moment stood out. In August 2022, while at Balmoral, the Queen invited William for tea. These meetings were customary, part of their long-standing tradition, but this visit felt different. A staff member recalled that the Queen appeared tired, but mentally sharp. She poured the tea, looked William in the eye, and spoke deliberately. Her words left a lasting impression. It wasn't just about Meghan's choices, it was about the deeper intent behind them. William later admitted to a friend that the moment haunted him. That conversation marked the first time he realized his grandmother wasn't just concerned, she was delivering a warning. Soon after, the Queen discreetly ordered royal archivists to review the private records surrounding Harry and Meghan's departure. This task, conducted under strict secrecy, was her personal directive. She wanted the original agreement revisited. As they sifted through emails, letters, and notes, subtle discrepancies began to emerge. The Sandringham Summit, which had formalized the Sussexes' departure, had been built on mutual trust. Both parties had pledged not to exploit undisclosed royal content. But when documentary trailers revealed private royal settings, alarm bells rang. Despite her declining health, the Queen acted. She personally reviewed every document. After finishing, she made a simple yet pointed remark: Meghan was far more astute than many had assumed. Not long after, she summoned her private secretary and dictated a letter. It was to be handwritten, sealed with wax, and opened only under dire circumstances. This was more than a message, it was her final directive. A way to protect the institution once she was gone. After her death, the letter was locked in a secure drawer at Clarence House. Only Charles and William read it. Nothing was said publicly, but subtle shifts soon followed. The royal family's posture toward Meghan changed. There was no announcement, but those watching closely noticed the difference. The letter was short and handwritten. It didn't use formal royal phrasing or decree-like commands. It felt more like a heartfelt conversation. She reminded Charles and William of their duties, not just as future kings, but as stewards of the crown's legacy. She urged them to act with intention, not emotion. If anyone, royal or otherwise, ever exploited the family's trust for personal benefit, her message was unambiguous: the sanctity of private family life must never become public spectacle. She outlined what should happen if someone used their royal connections for personal gain. It wasn't a mandate, it was permission. William initially didn't know what to make of it. He hoped it wouldn't be necessary. But when the Netflix series aired, and more private royal moments surfaced, the Queen's words resonated more deeply. It felt like she had foreseen the entire ordeal. Even in death, she was guiding them. For Charles and William, the letter became a moral compass. When William later confronted Meghan about the unauthorized use of personal royal content, he wasn't just a brother-in-law addressing a grievance. He was fulfilling a promise to the Queen. Her words became their guiding principle. This was no longer about family disagreements or PR crises. It had become a matter of legacy. The monarchy's dignity, shaped over centuries, was being jeopardized for public consumption. When William discreetly shared the letter with close advisors, they were stunned. It was as if the Queen had predicted everything. Her clarity made it impossible to remain silent. Inaction now would signal complicity. Though she was gone, her message weighed heavily. Meghan may have assumed that with the Queen's passing, the royal household would become more lenient. What she didn't realize was the power of that letter. The Queen had drawn a boundary, and Meghan had unknowingly crossed it. By using her royal experience to tell a global story, she did exactly what the Queen had warned against. The gates closed, quietly, not in anger, but in solemn respect. Yet one lingering question remained within palace walls: what about Prince Harry? Was he merely swept up in it all, unaware of how far things would go? Or had he knowingly played a role in bringing private royal affairs into the public domain? No one could say for sure. The line between Harry and the movement around him had blurred. He had supported Meghan in every endeavor, from speeches to lawsuits and interviews. And signs suggested he was struggling. His motivations weren't always clear. Those closest to him sensed a battle within. His loyalty to Meghan was unshakable, but the cost was mounting. His discontent didn't begin with Meghan, it stemmed from childhood. The loss of his mother, relentless media scrutiny, and a longing for safety had left deep scars. Palace insiders understood that. Many even admired his protectiveness. But they also saw how his distrust of the institution had intensified. To Harry, the monarchy wasn't a sanctuary, it was a system that had failed him. Over time, that belief may have been weaponized. He was no longer just a prince stepping away from duty. He had become something else entirely. When Meghan entered his life, he found someone who shared his disillusionment. She challenged tradition and rejected silence. Together, they believed they could reshape the narrative, exposing injustice while embracing love and truth. But from the outset of their Netflix project, it was clear who was leading. Meghan was deeply involved, selecting themes, approving scenes, curating the narrative. Harry attended meetings but remained somewhat detached. He cared deeply about causes like veterans, mental health, and conservation. But when conversations turned to production, editing, or intimate royal footage, he pulled back. Palace legal teams noted this during their reviews. Harry preferred to stay high level. Meghan, in contrast, was fully hands-on. This distinction became significant. Harry's presence in the series, his voice, his memories, was undeniable. But emotionally, he seemed conflicted. Those close to him believe he didn't grasp the full extent of what was being shared, or how harmful it might be. One scene struck him particularly hard, a subtitled exchange with William after Prince Philip's funeral. Though the audio was muted, Harry had assumed that moment would remain private. It wasn't. When he tried to remove it, it stayed in. Tensions between him and Meghan surfaced during post-production. One night in California, during an editing session, they argued. Harry wanted to cut a segment about a strained Christmas at Sandringham. Meghan insisted it was crucial. The scene remained. Observers began forming opinions. Some felt sympathy, seeing Harry as vulnerable, shaped by past trauma. Others, especially within the palace, viewed him as a liability. At some point, they said, ignorance wasn't an excuse. He had signed off on everything. What hurt William most wasn't the footage, it was Harry's tone. The once loyal brother now spoke with resentment. He described feeling abandoned, silenced, betrayed. Regardless of accuracy, the palace felt the project had crossed a line. And Harry, whether reluctantly or not, had gone along. Signs of Harry's internal turmoil grew. After facing backlash, he called a longtime palace aide and asked one question: "Did I go too far?" The aide didn't answer, he simply thanked him and ended the call. Harry's fracture with the monarchy was now mirrored within himself. He had tried to protect Meghan from the fate his mother endured. But in doing so, he may have lost everything he once valued. Legally, he was responsible. Emotionally, he was adrift. Friends say he felt more alone than ever. He had fame, wealth, and attention, but no peace. He believed he was building a new life, only to realize he was trapped in a narrative he no longer believed in. On the eve of Meghan's final confrontation at Clarence's house, Harry was notified, but chose not to go. He remained in Montecito, turned off his phone, and withdrew, not out of indifference, but pain. The truth had become too difficult to confront. Now, Harry exists in limbo, not wholly guilty, but far from innocent. He stands between love and loss, uncertain whether he saved his family or played a role in its unraveling. The royal family hasn't severed ties, but the emotional distance is clear. William still holds out hope, perhaps for reconciliation in spirit, if not in action. Charles remains conflicted. Even Camilla has urged patience. But trust, once broken, rarely returns whole.